Little mini St. John's preview with our pal, Adam Zagoria. You're locked on.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, I want to take a moment to say how thankful we are for all of you. We appreciate your support. We're up to 10,400 subscribers on YouTube, which is amazing. We're proud to say the only daily podcast covering UConn men's and women's basketball, the hoops capital of the world, and we're thrilled to bring you the coverage you deserve. To show that gratitude, we're giving back, donating 10% of our revenue to Husky Ticket Project, helping send kids to games. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. All right, without further ado, it's a mini pod. I think there's no better person to talk about St. John's UConn preview than the guy I sat next to at the very first St. John's game, and that's Adam Zagoria. All right, let's get in Adam Zagoria right here. Adam, good morning. How we doing?
Good morning.
Yeah, listen, we were both at the St. John's game last time. What do you think? What do you think UConn has learned in this game? Obviously, they had another stirring comeback against Villanova. What can we expect going into the Garden on Sunday?
I mean, it's a huge game for both teams, Mark. I mean, St. John's has a 2.5 game lead, I think, right now over Marquette and Creighton, and I think it's 3.5 or so over UConn.
Mm-hmm.
So St. John's can pretty much, lock up the Big East, or at least take another step towards doing so with a win. And Connecticut is obviously at this point fighting for seeding. That kind of 2 through 4 position is fluctuating a little. And I guess if you look ahead and UConn is the 4 and St. John's is the 1, they could meet in the semis.
Right.
That would be Friday night at Madison Square Garden. So, this is the time of year when you're kind of, obviously the games matter for themselves, but you're also jockeying for positioning. And, I was looking it up. It's crazy. Rick Pitino has never won Big East Coach of the Year before, which is pretty crazy considering all his success at Providence and Louisville. And you got to think he's pretty much a lock to win that. And also he would be the first coach to win the regular season with 2 different schools because he won it at Louisville. So, there's a lot of history on the line too.
Yeah, no doubt. I heard this question in the press conference. I'm sure you did too. Back that February 7th. St. John's almost plays like a 90s NBA team with a lot of mid-range. They got guys who are proficient in that. What do you think Dan decides to do here in terms of trying to battle that? I know these guys are a lot bigger than UConn guards and wings. It feels like kind of a battle they can't win physically. So how do you think he's going to scheme it up where they can kind of negate some of that mid-range, or are they going to try to almost allow them to shoot threes because they're an under 30% three-point shooter?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, look, St. John's is clearly not a three-point shooting team. I mean, Rick came in after the Creighton game and read off the stats, and I think it was 38% from the field, 31 or 32 from 3, and 56% from the foul line, and they still won the game. Kadari and RJ Lewis are both in contention for Big East Player of the Year, and neither one of them really shoots the 3. So it's a unique team in college basketball. It's a unique team for Rick Pitino. So yeah, I would assume Dan just kind of, lets them shoot the 3. But the problem is Kadari's a real handful in that mid-range game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's 6'6". So he gets in the paint. He scores a lot in the mid-range. And, Zuby's been kind of between Zuby and RJ and Kadari, they've been kind of a monster on the board. So Connecticut's going to have to get in there and hit the boards, and they're going to have to hit some threes. I mean, between Caravan and Liam and Solo, they're going to have to knock down some threes.
The crazy thing is UConn out rebounded this really big physical St.
Yeah.
John's team in the last game. UConn is in the top 20 of scoring droughts in the country. They have these 4-minute droughts like we saw in that game earlier this month. But then they go on these big runs, which we also saw. So they have this Jekyll and Hyde nature. How do you think Dan balances that with how aggressive St. John's is going to be? Because I don't think Rick is going to change with anything that he does here. I think he's going to press them. Do you think maybe he allows a little more screening? It felt like they couldn't get the ball in bounds. I'm curious what your thoughts are on how he handles the press.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting, right? You and I were at that press conference where Rick said he went to the press, and that obviously I think they had UConn had like 47 turns in the 2 games combined.
Yep.
And Rick, it's not a secret that UConn's point guards are banged up, and Hassan Diarra is kind of playing on one leg out here. So, be interesting if Rick kind of breaks out another wrinkle from his vast playbook, but you got to think he's going to press more. UConn's gonna have to take care of the ball. He's talked before. Maybe Liam handles it some more. Maybe some other guys handle it. I also think that the crowd is going to be huge, right? It's probably won't be too lubricated because it's only noon on a Sunday.
Never underestimate, but yes, I agree.
There'll be some people pleasantly feeling good, but yeah, I mean, look, St. John's has been drawing sellout crowds at the Garden, and we all know UConn has a huge base in New York City. So I think you're going to see a fired up crowd. It is kind of an early game, so you wonder how the players and everybody responds to that. But it's a big time game. I mean, I've been watching this documentary on Rick, and he said the other day something to the effect of, "I want to kill myself if I lose to Danny Hurley, if I lose to whoever, I'm miserable and I want to die."
Yeah. He's been no stranger saying things like that.
Yeah, and we all know Dan feels the same way. So it's just a big time game.
Talk about that. The personalities, I think it's great for college basketball because we've lost so many big names in the coaching world, from Kay to Roy. The names go on, and now it's almost
Hamilton, Jim Larinaga, Tony Bennett.
I was about to say Randy Bennett, but Randy Bennett's at St. Mary's, so that's where my brain got stuck. No, I think we need this. You have Dan. You sent me a message about Ian O'Connor doing a book with him. I thought that's fantastic. We need these guys to be front and center. And I know Rick is a little older, but it doesn't look like he's slowing down at any point. How good is it for college basketball to have this kind of St. John's UConn rivalry rekindled?
Yeah, it's tremendous. I mean, I think everybody agrees that it's good for the Big East. It's good for New York. It's good for college basketball when St. John's is good. St. John's and Georgetown, both, big time programs that were successful in the 80s and then kind of went dormant. Connecticut's obviously been the best team in the country the last 2 years and has been a factor for 25 years. St. John's is pretty much irrelevant, more or less, for 40 years, since the Chris Mullen era. And what Pitino's done here in year 2, his track record at every school in year 2 is very impressive. And, the fact that he's, New York is a pro town. We got 9 pro teams here. So the fact that he's selling out the Garden for college games is great for the city. These guys are fiery, competitive dudes who, let's say they have a healthy dislike but respect for each other. I don't think Rick likes Danny's sideline behavior, and Rick knows that Dan's the big dog in the yard, and his team's won the last 2 championships, and Rick is now in a position where he's trying to take that away from him, and he's on the brink of doing that in the league. So it's great, and it's great for guys like me when these guys talk and quote and say all kinds of stuff.
No, and listen, a group of us were talking about this at the St. John's pregame. I haven't been as a UConn fan, take away the coverage, nervous about a St. John's game since 98 when Mike Jarvis was there, and Bootsy Thornton, LeVar Postel, like Meta World Peace was not Ron Artest before he changed his name. So like it's been a while since St. John's has had this type of muscle, and so it's great for the game.
And you're looking at a situation where if St. John's wins, they have a season sweep of UConn, which nobody would have envisioned in the last few years. And then again, if somehow we get a third game in the Big East tournament, then it would be, either, we're obviously looking ahead, either St. John's wins like a third straight or UConn comes up big, when it really counts.
Rick in St. John's put out a tweet or an update on RJ Lewis. He said he was doubtful for the game on Sunday. I joked around and said that I'm doubtful to do a podcast because I do like 100 a day. So we all kind of don't believe Rick that RJ Lewis is not going to play. And his own son didn't believe him when he said Kadari wasn't going to play when they played New Mexico in that Vice documentary that's on.
Yeah.
Are we to believe Rick, or should we be cautious that RJ Lewis is going to play?
I mean, look, he told us the other day, last Friday, that Davon Smith was going to be out until he was 100%, and he might miss the rest of the regular season. And then the kid went out and miraculously played. He says he told Rick he was okay that day, and it was a shock to Rick. And then Greg McDermott said, I don't believe anything he says to you guys, which was pretty awesome. So you got to think that's, I think RJ is dealing with a groin, but you got to think that he's going to do everything he can between now and Sunday to get ready for it. But if they don't have him, he's 17 points a game and maybe the Big East Player of the Year. So that's be a big loss.
I think he impacts it defensively too. He is such a disruptor on the ball too. So, and he's a phenomenal defensive player. They all are on St. John's. So, is there one particular matchup that you feel like is going to make or break this game, or is it really just going to be about can UConn handle the pressure and can St. John's string together enough offense to win?
Yeah, I think it's mainly going to be about can UConn handle the pressure and not turn the ball over. But obviously, Zuby and who's ever guarding him, Sampson or Taris Reed, those guys I think are going to have to do a good job, maybe try to get Zuby in foul trouble early because Zuby's really come on. I mean, this is a guy who transferred from Kansas with very insignificant stats. Mm-hmm. And, he's almost, close to like a double-double every game now. And then Kadari, obviously, who guarded him last time? Was it?
Oh God, a mixture. They had Solo on him. They had Jalen Stort. It's because even Dan was saying like his rotation has gone from 10 last year to 7 or maybe 8. So it's hard to say who's going to guard whom. It's about who's healthy and who he feels comfortable with. Who's in the circle of trust, right? He doesn't have very many at this point.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've seen Kadari. I mean, the storyline in the last game was how Kadari was a UConn killer, and he did kill them at Seton Hall. And then he had kind of a poor first half and a bigger second half last time when they won. So, until proven otherwise, Kadari kind of has UConn's number. And, Dan obviously hasn't, over the course of several years, hasn't had the answer for him.
Yeah, I did a lot of switching on everything that, because St. John's does the same thing. So I feel like when he has someone like Liam on him, they tend to switch so that he gets a smaller guard on him or a smaller wing. So we'll see what happens. I think that's going to be the key though. If they can, RJ Lewis is great, but Kadari has been that kind of Swiss Army knife where he does everything and kills UConn. So appreciate you coming on for a few minutes, man. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully we have a great game on Sunday.
All right, Mark, take it easy, buddy. Good seeing you.
Well, that's it for our mini pod. We want to thank Adam Zagoria of Zag's blog for jumping on really quick and, giving us a nice, thorough overview of what to expect. I think this game's going to come down to whether UConn can control their turnovers and also, how effective RJ Lewis is and how honest Rick was about whether this guy is actually hurt, which we have come to find out that he is on track to play. I don't think anyone actually believed, Rick, that RJ Lewis wasn't going to play. But also, they have to out-rebound them again. If they limit turnovers and out-rebound St. John's again, then I think UConn wins this game. If they get out-rebounded, they get out-muscled, and their offense continues to struggle, then I think this is going to be a rock fight, and that favors St. John's. So, but in the end, I think UConn will win this game. I hope everyone's going to enjoy it. Hopefully, you get a chance to watch this before the game. And as always, keep those toughness meters rising. And if you're at the game, get after it. Go UConn.
Go Huskies.